Hey everybody, it's Angel from Halo Inspirations. We bring you inspirations to help you spread beauty and joy through your quilting journey. Happy Wednesday, whoop whoop. Happy hump day to each and every one of you. So what are we doing today? Today is a little bit of an inspiration on binding. I've done a few in the past, but it's just the normal everyday kind of thing that's going on. You do the straight stitch, you put the binding on, everything's happy day, go lucky, right? Well, this time I wanted to add a little something to it to give it some flair. We talk about using decorative stitches. That's what I did. And the inspiration actually came to me from the way that I bind my bags on the binding. I use a blanket stitch. Now it's a little different. The technique's a little different in the idea that, a bag's encircled and so you're stitching around in a circle instead of on a flat thing. But it's the same concept that I used a blanket stitch. Now I did two different ways to get this done and just gave you a few tips and tricks, just a little bit, but just an idea on how you want to do this. So that's what today's video is about. Now, it's not very long. What? I know, right? Okay, this is the item that I used, okay? This is the one, if you remember, we did this, the Shamrock table runner. So it's all stitched and bound, and I totally used the blanket stitch to give it just a little bit of character. Now, one of the things that I wanted to do, I did take a couple of pictures. And it's with the settings of your machine. So the first picture you're going to see is in fact that it will have a triangle that goes towards the left. I guess it'd be that way. I'm not sure which way is which on camera. I always struggle with that. But the dark triangle is to the left. But when you're stitching your binding on, you want this the one that goes in, because if you remember, the blanket stitch goes down, down, in, out, down, down, in, out. That's the general one. There's a lot of different blanket stitches, but that's the one that I used. So when it goes in, you want it to catch the binding, not the quilt. So that first picture shows where it would go to the left, which means it would grab the quilt, not the binding, right? There is a button on my machine, and I'm sure it's on yours. Take a look before you go crazy, get an idea you're going to do this. Make sure that yours can do a mirror image, okay? And I absolutely love this because the second picture I'm going to show you, it actually has the dark triangle towards the right, okay? So that means when the stitch goes in, it's going to go towards the outside of the quilt and catch the binding. But the beautiful thing is it's towards the dark side. Y'all know how we like to press towards the dark side? Well, this time we're stitching towards that dark side. I don't know what your machine looks like, so you'll have to play with it. But if a mirror image is something that you have on your machine for the blanket stitch, you'll definitely want to hit that button so that when your stitch goes in to grab a bite, it's grabbing the binding and not the inside of the quilt. That'll be a hot mess. And you want to pee your pants. And it will be horrible. So, sorry. At any rate, it's a true story. It'll just be a nightmare. So make sure you hit that mirror image button and you grab towards the dark side if that's how your machine works. The other thing I wanted to let you know that there is the stitch length, right? I actually set mine at 2, which is my normal stitch length that I use. Then there's another one that kind of looks like a ziggy-zaggy. And I went ahead and set that also at 2. But what I want to explain that is, and I'll throw a picture up here. I didn't take a picture, but I'll make sure to get that done for the video. You can see wherever that picture is. The zigzag one is actually the bite, how far that bite's going in. And I did set mine at 2.0 also, but I would so encourage you to play with the stitch length and the stitch width to see what you would like on your binding. Because to be real, when you come in and see this up close and personal, you'll be able to tell I could have gone further in. It could have been bigger than 2. I liked it. It was good with me. But this is your quilt. You do your own thing, right? There are no rules, just guidelines. So the next thing I'm going to do, guys, yeah, we're going to go and get this started. I think I've said enough. So I'm going to bring you into the sewing machine and we're going to get this stitched down. So I'll see you in just a sec. Before we start stitching here, I wanted to talk about a few things. I did show you at the beginning of the video before I brought you into the sewing machine a picture of my screen to make sure that you understood what settings. Now yours might look different, but what settings you'll need. So that's already done. But what I wanted to show you before I start to stitch, you have this line that goes through here, and that's what we sewed the binding on with, okay? That's how it's attached. And whenever you have your needle land, you want to be right next to the line towards the inside of the quilt, not on the line. And I will show you later why. But you want to get close to it though. You don't want to be too far away from it, just right next to, like literally a thread next to it, guys. And then you will be good to go. Now there's a couple of methods. I actually prefer to use a walking foot, and if you'll notice, I do have an open toe, and that's because with my walking foot, it's really hard for me to see my needle. So I went ahead and used the open toe. And what you can't see down below here, but you will, I have clips to help hold it for me a little better, but I do prefer to glue. Y'all know I do prefer to glue, but I have a real struggle gluing straight with this line where I'm going to be able to hit next to it. If you're good with that, that would be the way to go. Now I'm sewing from the front. I've put the binding on the back. I've pulled over the binding to the front of the quilt. This is very different than I've done in the past, but I had a thing and I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I did the same thing, but I reversed it where I'm stitching in the ditch. So we're going to try that too and see how well that worked. But for right now, the binding's pulled over to the front and I'm just using a general blanket stitch. It'll come down to, in, out, down to, in, out, okay? And you just want to try and keep it lined up. Now, one thing you will notice is that my binding tends to flip up a little bit. I'm okay with that because then I can see the stitch better. But if you had your walking foot, that actually helps a metric ton on keeping it nice and flat for you. Of course, glue would too, not gonna lie. Just like I said. Now, I am by no means an expert at this. I do this with my bags, but I don't so stress about the inside. And it's a little different in the idea that we've got a circle and not a straight line. I mean, it is a straight line, but you're sewing inside of a circle. Now, I don't know if you can see it real well, but my binding is tending to flip up a little bit near the needle. But like I said, it really is okay. If it gets too much for you, you just lift your presser foot and lift it down. Okay? And you're just going to stitch all the way around just like so. Now, like I said, I'm going to do it from reverse. And we'll see what that looks like because I have no earthly idea what that would look like. Well, that one got a little far. Normally, what will happen is it still closes, even though it looks like it won't. As long as I'm stitching over top, that one won't. Now see, if you'll notice, my needle came down right on this fabric and there's nothing for it to come over, so it won't close it very well. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of try to maneuver it a little bit. If I really wanted to, I could hold it down with something to help a little bit, and then once it's back on track, I can not have, you know, something in the way here. But if you'll notice, every blue moon I'm getting on that stitch line, I'm really wanting to try not to do that. Okay, you want to be on the right side of that stitch line. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch a little bit, And then when you come back to see me, I'm going to have this reversed as if we're going to sew stitch in the ditch, okay? But let me just sew just a little longer. Okay, so now I have flipped over the quilt top, and remember I applied the binding to the back first because we wanted to do something pretty on the front, but I want to see what this looks like. This may be a method that works for you. It may be a method that works better for me. However, if I like this way, I would put the binding on the front. So first, and then bring it over to the back and stitch in the ditch on the front. But we're just playing. We just want to see if this is a method that you might like. So I'm going to go ahead and drop my needle right in the ditch because we are going to be doing stitch in the ditch with the blanket stitch. Whoop, whoop. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull the needle up and bring up that bobbin thread. Grab some tweezers here. And get that bobbin thread. Why am I doing that? So I have something to tie and I know it won't nest in the back or the front, technically. So then I'm going to go ahead and drop that needle. I like to put it down right where it came out. So I like to lift my presser foot and then put that needle right down in there. Hang on to those threads so they don't go crazy on you and disappear. And then we're just simply going to stitch in the ditch with our blanket stitch. So what I'm doing is in the ditch is the one that's going down, down, and then it's going to grab, it's going to go over and grab the binding. So we're still in that mirror image setting. Okay, I notice I'm getting a little off track, but that's okay. There we go. Get it back on. Anytime you have to resituate, with a blanket stitch, you want to make sure you're on the outside where it's coming down. If you go in and then move the quilt, it'll be like a zigzag. You want it to go in and out straight. So you don't want to be out in the part where it goes out to make any adjustments. And then this is it, and we'll see what it looks like on the front. You know, I had to glue it so because I can't see it. So what we're going to hope is I glued okay. This may not be a method that you may want to do. It may not be a method I wanted to do, but I thought we could have a little science experiment together. So I'm going to do a little stitching, and then we're going to look at this. We're going to analyze this whole thing together when I come back at you. So let me just stitch in the ditch for a little bit, and I'll see you in just a sec. Okay, so she's all stitched, so we're all bound, and I went ahead and hid the threads, buried them into the quilt, but I wanted to show you what we did and what it would look like, because I know how important that is to you guys, and I got no shame. Okay, so I'm going to pull this underneath the camera. I've tagged the first one where I was stitching on the front and pulling it over. Okay, so let me go ahead and switch cameras. Okay, let me take that off for just a second. So this is the one where we were, it doesn't look bad, guys. It really, really, truly does not. I can see a line where I wasn't close enough to the binding, but this is what it looks like on the front, and I think you can see there's a little line out here. Okay, so this is the one where I was pulling over to the front, the very first video clip where I was stitching along the front of it. So let's see what the back looks like. All right, so here we have, and I don't know if you can actually see this. I think you can, but I've got a line. This is actually where the blanket stitch line is. This doesn't bother me whatsoever, but if it does for you, you might prefer to do it the other way. But this is what it looks like. This is what we did together. Well, I got a couple more threads I got to cut, don't I? Okay. So, it looks pretty good. And I did do a lighter color thread for you guys, just so you could see what this would actually look like. But that's what she is. That's what we've got. Now, here's a good place. Remember I said you don't want to stitch on the line? So what happens is it goes up onto the binding when you stitch exactly on the line. But can you really see that? I mean, it's a little bit, right? But it is not that big of a deal. This is a great method to add a little character to your stitching. Now let's look at the other side. This is the one we stitched in the ditch, and I gotta tell you, if I did this on the front, this is perfect. I mean, we're human, so nothing's really perfect, but it looks really, really good. And I am super impressed with stitching in the ditch. I think this is my favorite. Now let's see what the front looks like. Now normally if I stitch in a ditch, I'm gonna sew the binding on the first time onto the front, okay, and I'll flip it over and glue it, but that way my front looks absolutely perfect. But this isn't bad. I had a couple of issues because I was sewing blind and I didn't have it glued absolutely perfect, but this turned out really nice. I think I like the stitch in the ditch better, which isn't actually what I did for the rest of the quilt, but I wanted to show you what this looks like. Super cute, super love it. So let me come back at you. Well, before I do, so on the sides I actually pulled it over. I did not stitch in the ditch. I got better and better, and you will too with practice. I do encourage you to practice on something small to get where your needle actually needs to land. But I will tell you, if you look really, really close, which is hard for you to see on camera, there's a line here, and I stitched right next to it towards the quilt side. And then what happened was, usually it wasn't a problem. Okay, every now and again, like there's my stitch, and you can kind of see that. So every now and again, but you know what, guys, this was fun, and it, like I said, it adds some character, and I would encourage you to absolutely try this if you want to add a little homemade feel to it, because it makes it look a little bit like it's hand stitched. Okay, so that is the blanket. Oh, you can see my stitching right through here. Looks a little heavy. I don't know if you can see that in camera, but it definitely looks a little heavier and a little different. So that's pulling it over and stitching on the front, pulling it over. I still think I really like this stitch in the ditch method. I think it's the winner. Okay, let me come back at you. So, all said and done, I hope this gave you, oh, that's upside down, right? I hope this gave you some inspiration to try something new and different with your binding. That's what this whole thing was about. I appreciate y'all stopping by. Well, not just me. Mayhem and I will be on today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for a live Quilting and Answers, live Q&A, whoop whoop, based off of this method. And we'll talk about a few other things. So I look forward to seeing you at 3 p.m. But thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you at the live Q&A, we hope. It's always there for the hashtag replay. But until next time, guys, may you continue to be inspired, productive, ever so joyful, never stop believing, and never stop making your dreams in quilting come true. We love y'all. Happy quilting. Whoop, whoop. See y'all soon.